Hello, this is the first of 4 videos for Periodic Program Review Orientation for Academic Programs. This first video will give an outline of PPR and what the process entails. So over these orientations, what we'll first cover here in this section is what program review entails, why we do it, and what the overall process is. In later videos, I'll walk us through the various sections of the Periodic Program Review self-study report and an optional external review, and then we'll conclude by going through how to submit your self-study report for Periodic Program Review. So let me just take a moment and direct you to the assessment webpage of my CedarCrest, which will have most of the key documents that I'll be referring to during this orientation. The assessment page of My CedarCrest is located once you log into My CedarCrest on that red list of links at the top under the assessment page. From there, you'll scroll down to assessment forms, and academic programs are linked in this section for academic program forms for PPR. You'll find the overall guideline documents, and then two key overview documents is an outline and a template. The Word template you can use to build your self-study report throughout the program. So when we're coming to talking about the various sections of the report, I really recommend referring to these two documents, the outline and the template, for an overview. So what is periodic program review? Periodic Program review is a collaborative peer review process for continuous improvement in the design and delivery of the student learning experience. So that's language that comes straight from Middle States and our regional accrediting body for Cedar Crest College. And effectively what PPR means is it's the moment where faculty and other stakeholders in educating students in an academic program come together and they talk about how well the program is doing. So your direct audience for PPR is really those people who are teaching in the program itself. Then your immediate audience after that for a PPR self-study will be a set of blind peer reviewers on the assessment committee. You will write a self-study report on the academic program that will be submitted to the assessment committee, and then two blind reviewers will collaborate on evaluating the self-study document according to the PPR standards. Then that flows up to inform the provost and other college faculty about the needs and vision of the program, and ultimately the president and board of trustees as we are making strategic decisions about the long-term plans for the college. And then, of course, when our accreditors come to campus to do a site visit, they're going to be keenly interested in how the PPR process has guaranteed the kind of academic quality that students and graduates, their families, employers, and everyone else who has a stake in the Cedar Crest credential have. So let's talk for a moment then about what role periodic program review plays in our overall program assessment process. If you think about this in educational terms, we have 3 broad kinds of assessments. The first is developmental, formative, and summative, similar to how we think about, say, a starting exam, right? An entrance exam for our students, the kind of exercises that we give on a class-to-class basis, or say a final exam that's cumulative. So when we begin a program, we have to do a kind of needs analysis. That's a developmental assessment for a new program. So how many students are likely to enroll? What are the resources that are involved? And as the program gets going, we need formative assessments. So those are our annual assessment reports. Within one given year, what did our students learn? And what can we do to improve that learning as the program moves ahead? And then finally, we have periodic program review, which is to say, let's look eventually at how over a number of years our students are learning and particularly achieving the program level outcomes that we expect of them. So you can think about the assessment processes as a kind of the stages of a plane taking off and landing. So in developmental assessment, you think about what you want your pilot to do before she takes the plane off into the air, right? So do we have enough gas? Do the flaps work? Is the crew ready? Are all the passengers on board on the manifest? We had enough food for food service and the like. And okay, so now we're going to go. So we take off, and that's developmental assessment, right? So that's what takes place in terms of the needs assessment for launching a new academic program. Now, of course, as we go along and we're flying to our destination, things might crop up, right? So there might be turbulence, there might be directions from a control tower, there might be a storm up ahead that we need to fly around, and that's really the year-to-year work of assessment, right? So let's think about where we want to go from our student learning perspective. What we want to ask is, what do we expect our students to be learning along the way? And how do we make the program adjustments as we're flying the plane? But eventually the plane has to land, and we need to take stock of everything. Okay, how did that flight go? Would we do things differently the next time we're flying the plane? And this last moment of landing the plane is where PPR comes, is that eventually we need to stop just kind of looking piece by piece at the annual assessments that we do in periodic program review. And let's look all told at the resources that are involved in terms of the time we dedicate to teaching our students, the number of faculty, the kind of expertise that we bring, the changes to the curriculum that we've made along the way, and get a whole sense of how the program, how the flight in our metaphor went. So how does all that translate into what we use periodic program review for? So the most important use of PPR is to have faculty who are teaching in the program collaborate together, right? So what is the student experience like within the program? So what I'd ask you to do in this program is to really look at the program from the view of a student. If you're a student moving from one syllabus to the next over the courses that are required in the program, from one textbook to the next, from one learning experience to the next, what does that look like? Is it coherent? And that's what PPR is meant to bring together. So that should involve bringing together the program's annual assessment results. So as you're looking at the outcomes that you have and how students have performed, what have students done over the course of that time? And then important to that is making a plan to create improvements for how you would design and deliver the program over the next coming PPR review cycle, over the next 5 years. And then finally, what use comes from PPR is communicating a shared vision of what that means throughout other faculty teaching in the program, students who are enrolling in your programs, and also stakeholders like employers and people who may be in the community who are going to accept our graduates with the credentials that they bear. There's also an important use for PPR in terms of our accreditation. Cedar Crest College is regionally accredited by the Middle States Commission on Higher Education. They're one of a few regional accreditors throughout the United States. And Middle States requires the systematic evaluation of all educational and other programs, including the periodic assessment of programs that involve student learning opportunities. So the very critical standard that we deal with when we're talking about the periodic program review of programs is Middle States Standard 3, in which Middle States says that an institution needs to provide students with learning experiences that are characterized by rigor and coherence at all program, certificate, and degree levels, regardless of instructional modality. So whether they're online, hybrid, in-person, on an accelerated format, or a regular format, we need to make sure that programs are operating consistently with higher education expectations. So what is the periodic program review process? Here's the nitty-gritty. Starting in about November to January, what programs should be doing is gathering the information for periodic program review. If you go to the outline of periodic program review and look at each section in terms of what data is required or what documents are required, now is the time to begin pulling that together so that when we come to the spring, what you want to be spending your time doing is the analysis. What has gone well in the program? What improvements, changes to assignments, changes to a curriculum do you want to recommend as part of the program? And then use the self-study to map out a strategic vision for the program over the coming 5 years. So that process should be taking place from January through March. The final self-study will come due on March 15th. of the year. If there are any meetings that need to take place with the assessment committee, if there's something missing or something that's unclear, that will be recommended by the co-chairs of the assessment committee. And you should expect to receive feedback in a detailed form regarding each of the PPR standards by June 15th, as well in a summative letter. So what follows after periodic program review? So the first thing that you should expect is a follow-up in case there's any items that need direct address. So the PPR self-study is evaluated by assessment committee reviewers on a 0, 1, 2, and 3 point scale. So anything that is scored as a 1 will require follow-up within the next PPR cycle. Anything that's scored as 0 needs to be followed up within the immediate year. A 2 is considered meeting standards, and a 3 is considered exceeding standards. So just pay attention to the follow-up. You'll have an annual meeting wrapping up the assessment committee's findings. So if you have any questions, that's the time to ask about their feedback. Then in the ensuing years, you should be following up on the strategic vision that you suggested in the PPR opening section and recommendations for curricular changes or resource shifts. Anything that requires additional expenses in terms of resources should be folded into the annual budgeting process. So if that means things like new technology or another shifting of resources, that goes into the annual budgeting process. And then over the course of a 4 or 5 year cycle, you should be reviewing the recommendations and improvements so that by the time you come around to your next PPR, which will be in about 4 to 5 years, you're able to report back on those sections. So let's take this next moment to go through the sections of a PPR in the academic program.